Hey guys, Murphy's Opinions here, and today I'm coming at you with another James Bond review, and today I'm reviewing the first of two Timothy Dalton films in the series, and obviously I've already reviewed License to Kill, so I'm going to be reviewing The Living Daylights today, which is made in 1987, directed by John Glenn once again. And the plot of the story: after Bond helps Officer Georgy Koskov making a defection to the West, the intelligence community is shocked when Koskov is abducted from his remote hiding place. Bond leaps into action, following the trail that leads him to the gorgeous Kara, who plays Bond as easily as she plays her cello, as they unreveal a complex weapons scheme with global implications. They are forced into hair-raising chases, riveting jailbreak, epic battle in the Afghanistan deserts with tanks, airplanes, and a legion of freedom fighters on horseback. Right, so that's basically the plot of the film. Let's get into the cast of The Living Daylights. So as I said at the beginning, Timothy Dalton steps into the role of James Bond after Roger Moore departed from A View to a Kill. And I honestly really enjoy Dalton's take on Bond in both his films, actually. I think his performance in License to Kill was better, but this is a fantastic start to the series for his take and interpretation. I really love just the more serious, gritty tone that Timothy Dalton brings to the role. I think, he plays Bond as more, just as a human. He seems more, you seem more, in my opinion, I feel more emotionally connected to Timothy Dalton's Bond than with some of the other takes on James Bond. And I think he's really great in this role. And I think this is a really kind of breath of fresh air and what the James Bond role, I think, really needed at this time. Cara Malovi as well, played by Mariam Diabo. Not one of the best Bond girls in the entire series, I will say. She's not terrible. I think a lot of people say she's one of the worst. I wouldn't say that. I think she does have a good chemistry with Dalton. And I think there's definitely, she's a likable character. It's just there's a couple of times where she does seem like she's, a bit too stupid. But I still think she's a likable character and a fairly decent Bond girl, I think. And we got Brad Whitaker, one of the two main villains, played by Joe Don Baker. I think, honestly, with the Whitaker character, it had potential, but I just don't think there's enough of him in the film. I think if the Whitaker character had been more explored in the film, I definitely think he could have been a great Bond villain. However, he's just not in the film enough, in my opinion, and we don't really get to know much about him. I think the concept of Whitaker is actually quite interesting, but it's really just not explored that well. I think he's a disappointing villain, in my personal opinion. And then we've got the other villain, Georgy Koskov, played by, I'll probably say this wrong, Jeroen Krab. He's actually, I like Koskov. I think he's a great kind of a great villain he's a bit of a he's such a he's just such a slime ball, and he's such a a snake in the grass, and I really like that. I think if they'd, as I said, given Whitaker more time, I think these two villains could really complemented each other really well, kind of like an Octopussy with Kamal Khan and Orlov. But I do actually like Koskov. I think he's a good villain. I think obviously he's not a big threat to Bond, where I think if they'd built up Whitaker more, he could have been the main threat to Bond. Obviously, we've got General Pushkin, played by John Rhys Davies, and I really like John Rhys Davies' work in the Indiana Jones films as Salah in Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade. And I really think John Rhys Davies is just a very good actor. I think he's one of those guys who, he's been in some pretty bad films, but he's still a good part of the film of those films, in my opinion. And he's great in this film. He's a really likable ally. They kind of go with this angle that he might be, the bad guy, but he's actually not, and he becomes like an ally to Bond. And he's just a really likable character. I really like the General Pushkin character. The henchman for Whitaker and Koskov, Necros, is played by Andreas Wozniacki. I apologies for these pronouncements and these foreign names. But I do quite like the Necros character. I mean, he is that classic kind of muscular blonde Bond henchman. However, I do like they kind of gave him a bit of identity, with when he goes to attack the place where Koskov is hiding. He uses the milk bottles as explosives. I think that's a really cool idea, and I just think he's one of those classic kind of tough henchmen with not that much dialogue done right, I think. And he's definitely one of the better kind of blonde, muscular henchmen, in my opinion. We got Saunders, played by Thomas Wheatley. I really do like the Saunders character. I think he's one of the best Bond allies in this kind of era of Bond. He just, I mean, at first, he starts off as just being. At first, you kind of think, oh, this guy's a bit of a dick, but then you realise him and Bond are actually, they may not always see eye to eye in terms of their opinions and stuff, but they both have a lot of respect for each other. They're both very, well-established agents, and both have, strong respect for each other. And, we really start to get to know Saunders more and like him in the film, and then that's when he's killed off. And I think that actually is really effective, and it makes you actually feel quite sad that he dies. So I really do actually like the Saunders character. I think his death is actually done very well, in my opinion. John Terry, and no, not the Chelsea footballer, plays Felix Leiter. I'm going to be honest, he is probably the worst Felix Leiter in the entire series. He's just incredibly boring. He doesn't really give much he doesn't really give his own take on it. He just sort of just says his dialogue, and there's not much to him. I think this Felix Leiter character is honestly really boring, in all honesty. Robert Brown returns to play M, and I always liked Robert Brown as M. I guess he was kind of one of the first M's I kind of knew, really, and as I said, obviously he's not as good as Judi Dench or Bernard Lee, but I do really like Robert Brown. I think he's an underrated M in my opinion. Q once again returns, played by Desmond Llewellyn, and he is actually, I really love the Q scene in this film. It's one of my favourite Q scenes in the entire series. The dialogue is on point, and one thing I've said this before in the video. I think the Dalton era really does give the Dalton era onwards. I think there's more kind of exposure to the Q character, which I really like. I think he's given more to do, and I really do like that. However, one character that I think didn't really thrive in the Dalton era was Moneypenny. We get Caroline Bliss, who comes into the role. I didn't talk about her in my License to Kill review because she's only in one scene, but she's just not very interesting. She's that classic she's the kind of stereotypical Moneypenny kind of take, and I just don't really like it. It's taken more of actually that she's in love with Bond instead of like, oh, it's a bit of flirtatious kind of banter, really. To be honest with you, I just think the Moneypenny character in Dalton era is pretty disappointing. The score for this film is done by John Barry, and this is his last ever score in the James Bond series, and he goes out with a real bang. I think this is a fantastic score. I'd say one of my favourites in the series. It might actually be my favourite. I haven't quite decided yet, but I definitely say it's up there. Some of the scores are fantastic. Like, for example, the Ice Chase one, the Exercise in Gibraltar, the title song itself, The Living Daylights, which is written with a ha, I think is really great. And I just think the music in this film is accompanied so well. It's played in all the right scenes. Just a fantastic score. I definitely recommend that you try and check it out because it's just such a beautiful score, in my opinion. Now, what are the scenes that really stand out to me in The Living Daylights? I'd say there are a lot of them. I really enjoy the opening title sequence. I think it's one of the best in the series. It does a really good job of introducing Dalton's Bond. Shows that he's more hard-hitting, more action in that sense. I really love the opening title sequence. It's a classic Bond opening title sequence, in my opinion. Just action, great dialogue, and I just love the opening title sequence. And we see the note as well of the Spion and Death to Spies note, which links later into the film, which I really like. We've got obviously the car chase when Bond and Cara are trying to get over the border to Vienna. That's a really awesome scene. The music in that is brilliant as well. And then it transitions into like a getting away on a cello case, going down a hill. That's a really good scene as well. The fight in the base as well in Afghanistan is really good. You've got the Mujahideen assisting Bond and Cara. That's really great. And then Bond fighting Necros on the plane. I really love that. And I even enjoy the Bond versus Whittaker fight towards the end of the film. I think that's really well done. So what are my overall thoughts on The Living Daylights? Now, I personally really, really enjoy The Living Daylights. I think it's one of my favourites in the series, probably just outside the top 5. I think what holds The Living Daylights back, really, for me, is the villain. I think if maybe Whittaker had been explored more, I think this definitely could have been a top 5 James Bond film. But for me, it's easily in the top 10. I really love the more serious tone. It definitely feels more like a spy thriller. I just think I'm a huge fan of the Timothy Dalton era. I think it's really, really underrated. And both films are fantastic. I'd definitely say I think I'd prefer License to Kill, personally, but I do think The Living Daylights is a great film as well. I definitely would say, if you're a fan of the more serious thrillers and serious kind of Bond films, and you somehow haven't seen The Living Daylights, I definitely recommend it. It's definitely one of my favourites in the series. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the review of The Living Daylights. My next review will actually be Tomorrow Never Dies, as I've reviewed License to Kill and GoldenEye already. So look out for that. Like the video, comment below, subscribe to my channel and my main channel as well. Follow me on Twitter and Ask.fm. And once again, thanks for watching, guys.